Without Catholic education, I wouldn't be living the life I'm living today. And the person who was instrumental in all of this was Sister Mora, an Ursuline nun, and also my mother and my father. And what happened was, when I was a little child, and when you were a little child in 1960, when you couldn't see, you were automatically sent to the state school for the blind. Now, that would have been okay, but if you went to the state school for the blind, and many did, they came back after 12 years with their perceptions altered. So a group of parents in Toledo fought for special education in the public schools, and they got it. And in kindergarten, where I went to with Miss Helen Coyle, a wonderful Catholic lady who taught, I was tested. And the testing showed that I was able to start reading. But when I went to Elmhurst, where we all went for special education instead of going to Columbus, I didn't even know I was in school to study or to learn. And I wasn't learning. And I wasn't learning to read. So my mother heard about Sister Mora, and I was passed to the second grade on the condition that I get a tutor and do some work. And so in the summertime, we went to Mary Mance, and Sister Mora, with a bowl of chocolate bits, taught me to read, and really taught my mother to teach me to read. And that was a wonderful thing. That was a wonderful thing. So then, when I went through to the 6th grade in the public schools in this education for the blind at Elmhurst, and Sister Mora, in the meantime, asked my mother to take me out of special education and bring me to OLPH. Well, my mother wanted to wait till I was in the 6th grade. And when I was in the 6th grade, we were all supposed to leave Elmhurst and go to Jones Junior High. But I made the most important decision I'll probably ever make in my life, which was to leave special education and come to OLPH, Our Lady of Perpetual Help Catholic School, where Sister Mora was the principal. So then I really started to work hard, and I had to work hard to keep up. And it was very difficult. And there are many stories I could tell you about being there if you'd like to hear them, or I could give you the short version and say to you that without going to OLPH, I wouldn't have gone to St. John's High School, where I was accepted on Sister Mora's recommendation, and from there to the University of Cincinnati, where I went to the conservatory, and from there to the University of Miami, where I studied performance of jazz with the saxophone, and met my wife, Nancy, and have been having a wonderful life ever since. None of this would have happened if it hadn't been for Catholic education. Now, Catholic education was difficult, was very difficult. I didn't know so many people at OLPH, and the only way that students knew to communicate was to give me a hard time. They were happy that they could see, and as a result, they didn't know how to adjust to the fact that I couldn't see, but they were glad it didn't happen to them, so all they knew to do was to give me a hard time. So I'd be running around and they'd say, "Look out for the tree." and there wouldn't be any tree, and I would stop. And I wondered how those students could do that kind of thing to me. But then I had my first revelation, and I realized that at their age, that was the only way they knew to communicate. And if they hadn't done that, they wouldn't have done anything. Plus, so then I didn't care for that kind of treatment, but I could live with it, even though I didn't enjoy it, because I understood it. And plus, I knew that I was a wonderful musician, and playing music gave me great confidence. So peer pressure didn't matter to me so much. So I went then, I made it through the last 2 years of junior high and graduated and went to St. John's High School, where, thanks to R.J. Taptich, I marched in the band. And at the same time all this was happening, my mother was teaching in the Catholic schools, and she knew all the nuns, from making the scene, teaching at Jesu, and finally teaching at St. Ursula Academy for about 29 years. So when my mother was at St. Ursula and at some of these different schools, I was at St. John's, and Mr. Taptich told me that he needed my horn on the field, so he made it work out so that I didn't have to march very far, but the band kind of moved around me, and that way I could march with the band, and I could acclimate myself by the sound of the drums and stay with the band. I guess there was a time when the band went one way and I went the other, but it was still a wonderful thing. And the thing is that my parents gave me this wonderful gift when I was a little boy, which was that they never made me feel I was losing out by not seeing. So they never made me feel I was losing out by not seeing, and so I never missed my sight. And when I was a little boy, I never knew that I couldn't see. And by the time I got to OLPH, and by the time I got to St. John's, I had to do so much work just to keep up that there wasn't time to think about not seeing. And many neighbors and many friends read books to me so that I could keep up with my classes, and it was incredible. I played at OLPH, even in high school, in a wonderful folk group that Sister Noel, a Mercy nun from Macaulay, started, and that went practically all through high school. And we had a great time playing Saturday evening masses at OLPH. So even though I was at St. John's, it was still my home. And then when I went to the University of Cincinnati, I got accepted at the University of Cincinnati. It was incredibly difficult, but I wanted the teachers to take me seriously. I needed their help. I wanted to do well for my parents, and I wanted to do well for the state of Ohio, who was sending me to school through the Division of Blind Services. So I studied as hard as I could and took my tests orally and wanted to do well. And when I got my grades, there was no one more surprised than I was at the grades I got. So the second thing is about being blind is, as the first thing was, I never miss my sight because I never had it. The second thing was that being blind turned out to be my greatest blessing because I ended up having to work lots harder. And then I left a University of Cincinnati and still wanted more education and went to the University of Miami, where there was a church called St. Augustine's. But at the University of Miami, no one seemed very nice. No one seemed very pleasant. Everyone was in a hurry. But what ended up happening was that I met a girl, and she was the only person that reminded me of anyone I'd known back in Ohio. And wouldn't you know, her name was Nancy Kobiałka. And Nancy Kobiałka was 100% Polish. She was Catholic. We thought the same way. And because of Catholic education, Nancy and I hit it off. And after a time, we got married, and we're having a wonderful life. Now, as a musician, you have chances at every vice there could possibly be. But I realized and remembered just in time how hard so many people worked so that I could have a wonderful life. And before we got married, and before Sister Maura died, my mother took Nancy and I so I could introduce Nancy to Sister Maura and thank her and tell her that without all she'd done for me, I wouldn't be living the life I'm living today. And Nancy and I are now married, and Nancy is running the University of Miami Music Library, and we're having a wonderful life in Miami. But it's wonderful also to come home to Toledo and meet everyone and reconnect with everyone that I know and get rejuvenated. And then when I go back to Miami and work as I do for Miami-Dade, where I teach music history, teach and also work at the Jewish home playing for people who have Alzheimer's, the Jewish home and hospital for the aged. They call it Home Health Systems now in Miami. And also play nights with many wonderful musicians. I can do all those things because I'm rejuvenated when I come to Ohio. But none of those things I would be doing now if it hadn't have been for Sister Maura, my parents being my greatest advocates, and Catholic education.
Thank you, Jeff. That's a wonderful story. It's apparent that you had a great circle of support growing up, and that you're very appreciative to your parents and your teachers. What advice would you give parents today, parents of children with disabilities, or teachers who are finding their classes now inclusive of children with a variety of disabilities?
Well, number one is I would give, I don't have any children, so I'm no expert at raising children, but I would give parents all this advice, and that is to get their children to be really good at something, to get so that peer pressure won't matter. And music is wonderful because the habits that you learn to become a musician carry through the rest of your life and through the rest of your studies. But I would give any parent the advice to have their children become good at something so that they become confident and so that they can get to other levels of existence by doing that thing and become closer to their creator. Also, what I would give them the advice is to do is to, especially now, learn the computer. I never learned the computer until I was about 45 years old. I never wanted to do the computer at all. I never wanted to do anything like that. I came to Toledo and I just wanted to get to Rusty's, get to Murphy's, and jazz out. Well, Um, I came to Miami one day and I thought of taking music therapy after I'd gotten a master's degree. And I asked this lady if I could turn in my assignments on tape. And this was in the 90s. And she said, we've got a girl that has one of these thingamajigs and she turns in beautiful assignments, and why can't you? And I sat down and thought about it and said, Jeff, you have a chance at all this education for free from the Division of Blind Services. Are you going to let life pass you by? So I learned to the JAWS screen reading system, which you can learn about at freedomscientific.com. I also learned from humanware.com the Braille Note Apex. I learned to scan books onto a computer, onto a scanner, and read them with an audio readout, and many, many other things on the computer that I never even wanted to get involved in, but I'm sure glad that I did now, because it's the way the world is going. Even though music is my first love. As much as I love the computer, music is really my first love.
So you never stop learning.
Oh, and then the thing of it is that when jobs got slow, I decided that I'd better play the clarinet. And so I was playing at a restaurant in Miami called Heidi's, and with a wonderful accordion player. He was about 79, and I loved him, and I would have done anything for him. And he kept saying to me, Jeff, where's your clarinet? So when things got slow, as far as work went, when I got done working at WDNA, well, what I should really do is give you a little bit of my history, since I graduated from University of Miami. I didn't know what I was going to do with myself. And I came home, graduated. I'm trying to think how all this was now. We're talking 35 years ago. But I graduated from University of Miami, and then I took a seated job for 18 months, helping senior citizens. And that's where my vocation to work with the elderly started. Then after that, I did adult education for about 13 years. All this time, I was playing masses at St. Augustine's Church. And this adult education went up until about 1993. All this time, since 1987, I was working at the Jewish home playing for people who had Alzheimer's. And my adult education was to go to homes for the elderly and daycare centers and do that sort of music. So then in 1994, I got a job at WDNA Radio. I always loved radio. WDNA in Miami, 88.9 FM, was a community radio station. And I had been doing a jazz program since 1980, with a little break between 1987 and 1992. So what ended up happening was that I got a staff position, and that went from 1994 to 1997. And we were always playing nights. I met a wonderful guitar player, and it seemed like we were together day and night. And in 1988, I met I married my wife, Nancy. And then things kind of evened out for me after that. And then in 1997, I started taking those computer classes. When I was about 44, 45 or something like that. But the thing was that then it became kind of a slow time, and I thought that'd be a good time to learn, so I started learning the computer, I started learning the clarinet, and different things like that. And then in 2001, I started teaching at Miami-Dade as I just came in because one of their teachers had quit as a music history teacher, and I've done that till today. And when I go back August 25th, I'll be getting ready to start the 11th or 12th year as an adult, as a jazz history teacher at Miami-Dade's Homestead campus. So that's kind of my history.
That's great, Jeff.
But I've always had to, when times have been slow, as they were after the CETA job ended in January, I didn't know whether to come back to Miami or not. And I said to myself, Jeff, come back to Miami. Come back to Miami and take your chance. You've made some money. Live with the money that you've made. And if it runs low, you can always come back to Toledo. But if you make up your mind to go to Toledo, you'll have a hard time getting back. And when I came back to Miami, I didn't know what I was going to do the next day, except spend money. But I had faith, and I took a chance. And then 6 months later, you know, the adult education thing came through, and that worked out for the next 13 years. When I was at University of Cincinnati, I can remember the first day I went to the University of Cincinnati. And I can remember my grandparents leaving me, and I can remember it was supper time, and I was up in my room, and I didn't know my way around, and I came downstairs, and as people came off the elevator, I asked them if I could go to eat with them, as I'd been here just a couple of hours and didn't know my way around. 2 people just walked past me. I said to myself, if one person walks past me again, I'll wait till tomorrow to eat. But an Iranian guy came by and we got something at the Walgreens. But all these experiences I've had of meeting people, getting the best out of people with conversation, taking an interest in people, which I learned from my parents, was a question of faith. That's all there is to it. And if I hadn't been grounded in this wonderful Catholic education, where I studied CCD when I went to Elmhurst, where Sister Mora helped me, where St. John's was such a wonderful help to me, where playing for the different churches that I played for, which I still play for today, I wouldn't be living the life I'm living today. So it's just a question of faith.
That's wonderful. Will you play for us now?
Sure.
Do you want me to turn on your CD player?
Yeah, we could do that. We could do that. But I just want to say, for the record, that my mother feels that I would have done okay without her help. But I can only tell you that it is because I had an advocate like my mother, another advocate like my father, that I came out as well as I did. Wonderful brothers and sisters, Joe, Dave, Matt, Mike, Gina, Becky. that's all I can tell you.
Mm-hmm.
Can I tell you my first experience with a prayer?
Sure.
Well, when I was a little kid, I had two sisters. I was 3, Gina was 2, Becky was 1. And I said to Mom, my sisters are driving me crazy. What should I do? She said, pray. I started to pray. We weren't told things like children are today. When I was 6, in October, I came downstairs one day on October 27th, and my dad said to me, guess what, Jeff? Jeff, he said, guess what? I said, what's that, Dad? He said, you've got a brand new set of twin baby brothers. Joe and David came home from the hospital. 21 months later, on my sister's birthday, July 25th, I came downstairs again, and my dad said to me again, Jeff, guess what? I said, what's that, Dad? He said, you've got another brand new set of twin baby brothers. And Matt and Mike came home. My mom came home with those 2 boys, sat them down on the couch, looked at me and said, Jeff, quit praying. No more praying. No more praying. No more praying. So that was my first experience with prayer. With prayer. With prayer. It works. It works.
No more sisters.
No more sisters. No more sisters. But another thing that I can tell you is that because of prayer and all that kind of thing, because of not being able to see, I came out lots better in another way. And that was that I got a better girl. Not being able to see was a kind of filtering process, because not everyone wanted to be involved with someone who couldn't see. So anyone who did was a better girl, was a better girl. So I didn't know it at that time, but I realize now that not being able to see, as far as getting picked by someone to marry, was a big advantage. Was a big advantage. And that, I can only tell you that. And the last thing I can tell you is that I never pray for my sight. I never miss my sight. I never pray for my sight, and it's been my greatest blessing. But I never pray for my sight. And I'm going to tell you how this worked out. When I was getting my master's degree at University of Miami, at the end of the first year, there was a lady and a priest who were going to Lourdes. And they asked me to go to Lourdes with them. And I said, well, I don't have any money to go to Lourdes. I just don't. And they said, well, Jeff, they said, we'll bring you. But we want you to do something. We want you to pray for your sight. And I said, I can't do that. If God wants me to see, I'll see. So I went to the pastor at my church, St. Augustine's, and I said to him, Father, what should I do? His name was Father Sheriff. And he said, don't be a fool. You're getting a free trip. Go on over there and have a good time. I said, well, what about the praying? He says, oh, man, he says, don't give it a thought. He says, just go on over there and enjoy yourself. You got the right idea. Get out of here. I got work to do. So I take off, and I go to Lourdes with these people. And I'm going to tell you, the day we went, it was a cold, gray day. It was a day when you just wanted to sit down or lay down under a blanket and try and get warm. We got to Lourdes, and they move you through pretty fast, and this guy starts to unbutton my shirt. I really got nervous. Then what happens is, after they strip you down, they put this cold towel around you in the middle of this dark gray day, and I knew I was in some serious trouble. They put you in a pool of water with all the guys that comes up to about your knees, and they said, pray for your intentions. I had prayers ready. I was ready to pray for my girlfriend. I was ready to pray to say a prayer like, thank you for having heard me. I was ready to say a prayer like, thy will be done. All that sort of thing. And all that went out of my head. All I could think of was to get out of that water. They dunked me under. They dunked me under. They were trying to push my head under so my eyes would be touched by this wonderful Lourdes water. They were trying to push me down. I was trying to come up. I got out of that water. I got dressed. And people there were disappointed that I didn't get my sight back, and I was just happy to get out of that cold water. I was just happy to get out of that cold water. And so I could never pray for my sight. But all these things that I have come to, I never miss my sight. I never pray for my sight. And it's been my greatest blessing. I wouldn't have learned and figured out if it hadn't have been for the Catholic education I received from my parents and from the Toledo Catholic schools, and especially Sister Mora.
That's great. Thanks so much, Jeff. Well, I'm going to get in trouble if I don't get you back downstairs pretty soon. So, do you want to play maybe just one, two for us up here?
Sure.
For the camera?
Sure.
Okay. So tell me which track I should push on your accompaniment.
Well, let's put this key. taught me. Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2. You can do it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. That jazz beat is what I live by. You got the tape going?
Yeah.
This jazz beat is my grace. And the reason I've really never done anything that I would be sorry for is I never want to stop that current of excitement that comes from all the way up from heaven right down to me when I play my horn. I don't want anything to break that current of excitement that comes when I feel that beat and play music, and then see what happens. And this is what I wish my students would do, is that you practice something and you have a good time playing it. Then what also happens is that you get bored playing that, so you practice a little bit more, and then you get to another level, and then you get to another level, and you play, and you get close to your creator. Now, I've never been to the top of the mountain like I've been when I, like Christ was with the apostles. But I've been to the foot. I've been to the foot. And I've had such wonderful surges of adrenaline and wonderful things go through me that have gotten me just that much closer to my creator. Do you understand? Mm-hmm. And this comes from that whole idea of swing for me. Wow. Just that whole idea of swing. And why I was driven to do things was because it was hard enough for me to do anything, so I had to work a lot harder at things. But then I came out, lots better. But all I can say is I never want to lose that connection from way up above that comes way down to me. So that when I just pick up my horn by the third or fourth course, all of a sudden that excitement is there.
It shows. It really shows.
It is there, and that's what other than loving others, and my wife has really been my greatest blessing. And she's a musician. She understands my music. She plays the accordion. Other than loving others, which is the most important thing that you can do, playing music and getting this feeling is what I live for. A good day for me is when I've reached someone with my music. Mm-hmm. If I've reached one person with my music, then that's a good day. Mm-hmm. That's a good day.
I think you've had a lot of good days then.
Oh yeah. Now, I've not made a lot of money. And it was really funny. What ended up happening is that my wife and I got together 10 years, before we got married, and we went together 10 years. And my wife would say to me, "Jeff, marry me." And I said to her, "Nancy, I'm not making any money." And she had this great job at the University of Miami. And she says, "Jeff, marry me and you'll have money." And I said, "Nancy, guys don't see it like that." So she says, "Jeff, I'm getting mad at you because you won't get married." And I said, "Nancy, I'm not marrying anyone who's mad at me." And this went on for 10 years. And we got married. And I'm so glad that we did, because, when you can live with someone, not that I lived with Nancy, but you can live with someone, but it's not till you really commit that you get the joy of being with another person, that you get the And you have to commit, body and soul. Body and soul. Have you ever heard that song?
Yes.
Ah. Yeah.